Let me tell you something that's very interesting that God has shown me recently. A lot of the people that did either root work or spell work on their partners, this is a timeline from the past that's being brought to the forefront right now. These could be your parents, these could be people that you've seen growing up. These are people who were the forerunners or the forefathers of the energy swapping that they've done. What I'm picking up on is a family that wasn't necessarily organic, meaning either the father or the mother had pretty much done root work or spell work in order to bind this partner of theirs into the marriage. And a lot of you are a result of that marriage. But what's interesting here is the children that were supposed to come into the life of the divine counterpart showed up in this karmic family instead. And when they did, the person, the karmic that had bound their partner into that marriage with them, decided to continue what they did to their partner to you, the child. So this looks like trying to bind you in demonic marriages, in what I've called shadow marriages, that were supposed to siphon and cut off your light and redirect it, reroute it to them and their family. Because what's going to happen is, if the divine children that showed up in that marriage, which they were going to anyway, they were going to show up in the divine counterpart's real soulmate and their marriage, had this person not stolen or hijacked or pretty much kidnapped this person into marrying them or into having kids with them or businesses with them. These kids were supposed to, their spirit, their soul was supposed to show up in this realm. That is how needed and necessary they were. And so when the situation and circumstance changed, they weren't going to not show up. They showed up either way, but they showed up into karmic households. These are inorganic karmic structures that I'm talking about. They are what Spirit has said, inverted marriages. When I say inverted, they're not just coming from an unconscious collective of karmic people going through karmic situations and unable to see it for what it is. No, these are people that I've called cults, because they know that they aren't right. They're not right with God. They know that their soul is probably completely gone. They're completely sold out to a lot of entities. They're spiritually dead. They know that. And what they're doing, trying to offset that, trying to still remain blessed in this lifetime, what they're doing is they're hijacking people with divinity. They're hijacking people who are right with God and forcing them, binding them into marriages that they would never have in their free will agreed to. So pretty much the children that showed up because they were rerouted from the get-go. They were rerouted and they showed up through the vessel of either a karmic mother or from the shared vessel of the karmic father that they were not supposed to show up in. And so what happened is the person who bound this person, your parent, into the marriage with them, saw you as a direct competitor. That's what happened. Their spirit of envy and hatred jumped into you since you were an infant, a fetus, since you were a child. Because I know you've heard this before, and I'm not going to be telling you something new regarding this. These people received dreams and revelations. They were almost like warnings, almost like baits for them. God calling them out into the light because they had been feasting upon your parents. One of your parent, they had been feasting on their energy, stealing their resources, their abundance, their prosperity, and casting them in the light of the evildoer, of the lazy one, of the crazy one, of the unstable one. So when you, dear lover, began to go up and wake up and go down the path that your father or your mother, if they're the divine one, was supposed to go down, this is when this person freaked out and started to send an army of karmic false marriages. They have gone to the point of binding you to an entity, having you assaulted by entities. You probably know this. They were trying to ritually conquer your free will. And you know what God is saying to this person? Everything you do henceforth, everything you do to harm my child, you are doing it to me. You're directly harming me. Because they are paying for a karmic debt that they thought would never show up. That's the truth. They're not just attacking you. They're trying to root back what's being uprooted by God. They're trying to root back a lie that now God is using you, but as just an example, to uproot. And that lie is that this was a relationship that was organic. And for a lot of you, when I said forefathers, right, or one of the original way makers, way showers of karmic relationships that aren't organic, right? Because there are organic karmic relationships where both parties are lost and hurt and they're trying to understand themselves better. That's not what I'm talking about. This is one person who is blasphemous, who is an antichrist, who is, as so religious as that sounds, who is willingly binding through black magic, blood magic, whatever you want to call it, a partner that does not organically belong to them, a partner that is destined for a divine union. That is the truth. What you have experienced, especially if you are still out in the market, what you have experienced is but a shadow, a reflection of the karmic structure that they have tried to forcibly build and continuously mend, because it's always being cracked down by God and the divine. They have continuously tried to mend it by binding people like yourself, chosen ones, earth angels, starseeds that were embedded in these karmic families because they were rerouted into them. They weren't originally organically going to show up in those families. They were rerouted because one of the parents hijacked the divine counterpart. This has been going on for centuries. This is nothing new. This is someone who didn't just want to stop you. They wanted to add the blessings that were meant for you and your partner to the greed that they had piled up. So what God is doing is they're stripping them back to everything, all the way to the past, all the way to the past when they first did their spell work, first cast their spell, and bound their partner, who became either your father or your mother. That's where God is taking them, all the way to the beginning. Because they thought they had that under lockdown. And they did. For a lot of you, they have actually used their partner, their divine partner, to come up against you, to the point where this partner may not even be able to look God in the eye. They cannot show up for themselves spiritually like that anymore. They had held out all those years that they may have been in the relationship with this partner of theirs, up until the time came when they had to stand up for the kids, the spirits and the souls that were rerouted into that karmic family that they themselves were bound into. The same kids that this divine partner was supposed to have in their divine counterpart relationship that was stolen from them. And instead of stepping up to the plate and defending you, this is a parental figure that stood back and allowed you to be devoured. In fact, took part, gave their very weighty consent to the ritual that was being done on you. Why? Because they felt hopeless. And for a lot of you, this is somebody who gets constantly attacked spiritually by their partner. They're constantly bound. They constantly renew the contract with them over and over again. They constantly put them back, submerge them back into a spell work that incapacitates their free will. They try to do that same thing with you, possibly making you think that you have entered relationships with twin flames or soulmates, when in reality, those were contracted people, spirits that were supposed to bind your free will and reroute your blessings back to this person. All of those timelines have collapsed. Every single one of them, every rendition of them have collapsed. The maternal figure, the shadow mother, is going to pass away. That's what I'm hearing. If not them, then the person, the divine counterpart that she has been feasting on, is going to pass away. That is the karmic retribution at hand at this hour.